What's going on, everyone? So welcome to my latest video. This is part of a series where I focus on a specific director and rank that director's work from worst to best. Done such directors in the past such as Christopher Nolan, Andrei Tarkovsky, David Lynch, Wes Anderson, and many more directors. You guys can check out those directors and those many more directors in my director playlist down below. But guys, you clicked on this video, so you know it this time around I'm doing David O. Russell's films and ranking them from worst to best. Now, I'm filming this video in December of 2023. As of filming this video, he has done 9 movies, so I'll be ranking them from 9 being his worst to 1 being his best, and of course, my humble opinion. Now, I will also say this as a caveat. There is what's called the accidental love debacle. At least that's what I'm coining it. See, what happened was, I believe it was 2008, David O. Russell was directing Accidental Love, and it was in a development hell kind of stage. So he said, you know what, screw it, I'm leaving this project. And he did so in a way that he actually removed his name. So when you look at Accidental Love, it says directed by Stephen Green, which is a pseudonym. So because I see Stephen Green on there and not David O. Russell, I'm not counting that movie as a part of his work. I'm not. In fact, that's why I'm not saying, hey, David O. Russell's 10 movies, and instead saying 9, because I'm not looking at that as his movie. So if you are a fan of Accidental Love, that's why it's not going to be on this list. But if you guys do include that as a part of his work, I'll definitely respect that. And, you know, I'll be looking forward to seeing your guys' ranking in the comment section down below. But guys, enough exposition. Let's get started. So, kicking things off, number 9, we have Spanking the Monkey. This was his debut movie. I didn't know the premise going into it, but I have to say the premise itself is interesting, but the actual execution left a lot to be desired. There was just a lot of cringe-inducing things, and not in like a, haha, that's hilarious, or, oh, that's thought-provoking. It was more of like a, oh, this is kind of paint by numbers. You can definitely see inklings of his talent later on in terms of directing, but for the most part, I wasn't that intrigued by the movie other than that, hey, you had a good premise, but it was a swing and a miss in my book. Probably would have been rather spanking my monkey, so to speak, over watching this movie again, but alas, that's my personal opinion. And that's why Spanking the Monkey is my number 9. Next up, my number 8, we have Flirting with Disaster. So this is going to be a hot take, because this is actually a movie that is critically acclaimed and beloved by many, including people I follow on Letterboxd. And you know what? I can definitely respect that. But this was just yet another example similar to Spanking the Monkey, where I thought the premise was interesting, sure, but the actual execution of the story left a lot to be desired. It did feel very cliched in its execution. Not a terrible movie, just a movie that watching it, I just couldn't help but be disappointed by the end. In fact, I was surprised when I did my review and everything and then went online and saw that it was a movie that was beloved. I was like, oh, wow. So I was like, well, I guess that's a hot take. But, you know, like I said, I can respect if you like this movie, but for me, it's kind of disappointing. That's why it's my number 8. Next up, my number 7, we have Amsterdam. So this is his latest movie, and this is a huge misfire, like a huge misfire. But I think the reason why I like this more than his other 2 entries is because the filmmaking, besides the directing, which I know is very, very important, but besides that, the other filmmaking elements are there. It has a nice costume design. It has really good makeup. It has a fantastic cast. I mean, the cast is great. Taylor Swift has an interesting role that has an interesting end, for sure. That definitely stands out and is one of the things that, when I think about this movie, comes to mind. It's just an overall sloppily directed movie that has a story that leaves a lot to be desired. But again, because of these filmmaking aspects that I liked, it's why I liked it better than these other 2 entries that I mentioned. Again, Amsterdam, I do know some people that do like this movie, but for me, it was a swing and a miss, but at least it was a swing that had some pretty good filmmaking in terms of, you know, those technical aspects that I mentioned. But yeah, that's why Amsterdam is my number 7. Next up, my number 6, this is where, when I saw it years ago, I started saying, oh, I guess David O. Russell's not invincible. My number 6 is Joy. Jennifer Lawrence is great. I think that the slice-of-life approach to some of the elements do work. Similar to Amsterdam, it's got a nice costume design, nice production design. But also, like Amsterdam, it has directing issues. And not only does it have directing issues, it has pacing issues. In fact, the pacing of this movie was laborious some. But again, because Jennifer Lawrence is so good in this movie, I couldn't help but be intrigued by some of the elements in this movie and also appreciate some of the other filmmaking elements that I also mentioned. It's a middle-of-the-road movie. I can definitely see why it got mixed reviews when it first came out because, like I said, I felt mixed about it. But I can also see the appeal in this movie if you do like this. But for me, thought it was pretty middle of the road, and that's why for me, Joy was my number 6. And now we get into the nitty gritty top 5. So my number 5 is Ihart Huckabees. I enjoyed this movie quite a bit. I really like the performances. They are firing all cylinders. Some of the humor quite worked, and it just has a whimsical charm to it that I couldn't help but smile with all the humor that they were going for. Not an amazing movie for sure, but it is one that I did thoroughly enjoy, and I can definitely see why it is a critically acclaimed movie of his. Do I love it? No, but again, I did thoroughly enjoy this, and that's why it is my number 5. Next up, my number 4, we have Three Kings. So Three Kings has great performances from everyone, including a surprising Spike Jonze. I miss when Spike Jonze was acting because I thought that he was really good in particular in this movie. Definitely a movie that is filled with surprises, and I really appreciate that. Of course, the cast is great. I also liked David O. Russell's directing. I thought it was quite sturdy. Just a rock-solid, enjoyable movie that at the same time has a lot on its mind, and with what it has on its mind, it's interesting. And that's why, for me, Three Kings, I have as my number 4. Next up, my number 3, we have The Fighter. So The Fighter is a movie that I've been actually looking to revisit. It's been quite a long time since I've seen it, but one of the big things that stood out about this movie, and I know I mentioned the cast several times of O. Russell's movies previously, but the big thing that stands out about The Fighter is that it has a cast filled to the brim with incredible performances. Christian Bale, Melissa Leo, Amy Adams, even Mark Wahlberg. I mean, this is a cast that is stacked to the brim. It's also got a sturdy story. I mean, it's a very inspirational story that at the same time is also gritty. Hard to watch at times, but it's also a film that it hits on all levels. I think it's a rock-solid film, and I do like it more than Three Kings, specifically because of Christian Bale's performance, man. That was something to behold. Just a really, really well put together film. I am looking forward to rewatching it because I do think that it will be a film that goes up in my rating. But if you have this as your number 1, totally get that. Respect. But yeah, The Fighter, it's my number 3. Next up, my number 2. I was going to say this was my first O. Russell film, but it wasn't. It was my second. But it was my first O. Russell film that I saw in theaters. My number 2 is American Hustle. Actually, American Hustle, now that I think about it, I think American Hustle was my first R-rated film that I saw in theaters. American Hustle was quite an experience. I really liked that film in theaters. And I did see it, I think, 2 other times. Not in theaters, but afterwards. I liked American Hustle. I think that it's a film that has a lot of energy, and it has all of the elements that I've sprinkled throughout this, ranking with what I've liked about, certain of his other films. But it's all of those elements that come together. A great cast, great performances, great costume design, great makeup, sturdy storytelling at times. It's just everything works with this movie. But I don't think it's a perfect movie. I don't. And I think that is in large part because of the length. I do think that it is a little bit too long, and I think that in retrospect, even the first time I saw American Hustle, I think that I knew that. But it's still a very, very well put together film, and I can definitely see why it was an Oscar nominee in terms of Best Picture in the day. So definitely get that. And that's why I have American Hustle as my number 2. Next up, my number 1, you probably guessed it already. My number 1 is, let me pull it up. Here we go. Let's see if you guessed it, guys. My number 1 is Silver Linings Playbook. Silver Linings Playbook is a great film. This is the film that I saw and I was like, okay, I need to check out all this guy's work because the directing here is fantastic. The performances, the tone. I mean, this is a film that's balancing drama and comedy in a seamless fashion. Like, it walks that fine tightrope that so few films are able to do. Like, this film and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, I think, are 2 great examples of films that balance comedy and drama seamlessly. And I'll even say this film might do it a tad bit better. And the reason why I say that is because it throws in there romance. Like, that is hard, juggling all those different genres, but this film manages to do so well. It works on so many different levels, and I also really love the filmmaking. The score, Danny Elfman's score is so good. The humor just really, really works. It's got such a great ending. I love the themes. I love the messages. This is David O. Russell's near masterpiece. I don't quite give it a 5 out of 5, but I do think that it is close. And I really don't see David O. Russell matching this anytime soon. But yeah, Sylvain's Playbook, it's my number one. Now, at the end of these rankings, I do like to talk about the director a little bit, and I will with David O. Russell, and I'll say this. I haven't mentioned until just now about David O. Russell's personal life, and that's because I try to separate the the artist from them as a person. And it's one of those rare instances, though, where David O. Russell, I don't necessarily think is a great director. I just think that he knows how to, pick his cast members. Like, he picks great casts. Like, the cast of all his movies, outstanding work. Problem is, though, as a person, is that he's, from what I've heard, again, I don't know him. From what I've heard, he's not the best individual, and that's causing a lot of people not to want to work with him. So I am curious if he's going to be working again, but I don't necessarily think that he is a good director. I think that he's an okay director that just so happens to work with great cast members that elevate the material. That's not to say that I think that he's bad. I just don't love his work. I think that some of his work is quite good. In particular, the 3 movies that got him Best Picture nominations, The Fighter, American Hustle, and Silver Linings Playbook. But he's not a director that I can say I fully embrace him and love him. I don't. I think that he is someone that, when I look at his repertoire, so to speak, he works sometimes, but then there's other times where he just doesn't necessarily work for me. But he's all right. But that being said, I do want to hear what you guys think of David O. Russell, both as a director and as a person. I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts, as well as your ranking down below. And as always, don't forget subscription, notification bell, follow me down Letterboxd, and I will catch you guys later.